Welcome to the Made in the Mist podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Now please welcome your hosts, Emma and Dan.
Welcome everybody to another amazing episode of the Made in the Mist podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. We are now in season 2 of our podcast. It was a great season last time, our first year doing it. We had some amazing guests from the likes of Mayor Jim Diodati, Jen Harper from Cheekbone Beauty, April Mullen, a fantastic director from Niagara Falls, and of course Vanessa DiProfetis, the girl with the dogs. What a fantastic way to really celebrate entrepreneurship, innovation, and the skilled people we have right here in Niagara Falls and the Niagara region. And we're keeping the fire going with season 2, episode 1, with a remarkable individual, Melanie Sodka. She is a TED speaker. She is an entrepreneur. She is a professor. She is an innovator. She is a mother. What haven't you done in such, you're so young and you accomplished so much. So welcome to the show. And we're so happy to have you. You're so accomplished, and we're really excited to dive deep into everything that you've done so far in your life. And of course, we want to make a mention to our co-host today with a new name, recently married, Emma Eldon, with a D, E-L-D-O-N. E-L-D-O-N?
E-L-D-O-N, yeah. Eldon.
And your husband's name is John?
Yeah, Jonathan.
So he could be Eldon John.
Oh, yeah. It's good. Thank you. I'm excited to be interviewing Melanie today, and thank you, everybody, for the welcome back.
Yeah, no, that was great. I hope everybody had a great summer. We're now rolling into September. The season has started. Everybody's motivated. And again, we just want to welcome Melanie. Melanie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's such a pleasure to be in such good company with all of these previous guests and with the both of you. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Like I said, we only bring the best onto the podcast.
Wow.
So you're in the elite group of entrepreneurs and innovators here from the Niagara region. So I just wanted you to give a quick background of, how you kind of got started to where you are today. I'm sure that you had, a lot of obstacles, perhaps a lot of different experiences, and and quite a long journey to get so accomplished like you are today. So, from the top, childhood, perhaps some of the things that shaped your life to become the person you are today.
Sure. It's funny. I'll spare you some childhood details, but yeah, I think as a kid, my mom always saw me interested in teaching and business, and it was never a direct route to that, right? So I was always like, I want to be the cashier with the register and managing the money, and then I always wanted to be the teacher. And it's funny because I didn't go into school for any of these things. I went into school for kinesiology. And
Kines grad here
there
too.
It is,
wow.
right?
And look at us.
Wow.
Now we just transitioned from the
look at you.
health
I failed out of kinesiology, my friend. I didn't get back in. But again, that's okay. That's part of the journey,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, failure is one of our best teachers. And so I ended up in sociology and human resources. And so it kind of comes full circle. Because, in terms of really understanding where I wanted to go and really trying different things, I was a compensation analyst at McMaster University. Very different than kinesiology.
Yes.
So very quickly realized that was not the job for me, and ended up in corporate. So if you've had Pizza Pops or if you've had Cheerios or Green Giant, I know I did, and gained the Frosh 15 when I started there at that company. I ended up there in marketing and HR.
Oh, wow.
And so it just led me to trying new things, and really the learning curve was steep, but corporate is where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
And learned a lot of my lessons there, and then got into HR, and then I found myself teaching. So I was realizing this business part that my mom saw in childhood. And then I also was realizing this teaching piece because I was now internationally training and recruiting for the company.
Okay, great.
And then I got my MBA and realized quickly if I had my master's, I could become a professor. And so corporate
Nice.
with kids, commuting 2 hours a day was not suitable. And so when I left the corporate world and started teaching, my husband actually said hey, I got my wife back. So that was an interesting turning point. Yeah, so it was a bit of balance. But I was not satiated by one job.
Yes.
I think a lot of our listeners will know that, we have multiple jobs and side hustles and trying different things, right? So I was a prof, but I was also starting my coaching business. And then I started to speak. And so, doing all of these things, I'm sure we'll get to this, led to burnout. And burnout is what led to me creating these frameworks to help other people understand how they commit. Where is their ambition? Where does it lead them? How do they manage their ambition? And so I mean, it's been a blessing in disguise, this whole journey that's been unconventional, but has led me to be able to do what I do and speak and research and help other entrepreneurs.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of established what worked, what didn't work for you. So you started out of teaching and you went into coaching. So is that when did you first launch what you have today, or has that evolved over time?
It evolved. I think, the coaching world is an interesting one. I have my certification maybe 10, 12 years ago. And the promise back then was that you can have this full roster and do this full time and make tons of money and just be this, magnificent coach. And, I sat there with a couple of clients on my roster, but it's not what they promise, right? So you have to go deeper into and find a niche. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down. So I really just looked at burnout as an area to focus, and it was being studied, but there's so much literature and there's so much research. So I tried to kind of bring it all together and find the connections, which I love to do. And I created an assessment really to help people understand more about their capacity. Because, burnout is also, we're getting a little bit, the word has some fatigue, like it's fatigue. We have this fatigue around this word burnout, and nobody really wants to talk about it, but we just say that we're, burnt out. So started to create some tools around better understanding that. And then I started to speak. I mean, the TEDx was a huge piece for me to be able to put 15 minutes worth of content and string along this story. So personal stories, but also tips and tools for people to really recognize some of the habits in themselves. And that really springboarded me to speaking and getting a little bit more recognition.
That's amazing. That the TEDx, where was that? First, the context of. I'd love to know when you started talking and focusing on burnout. Can you give us a year that you kind of focused? That was 20 before COVID. Was that after COVID?
Yeah, it was before COVID. I was at a different academic institution, and I had created an entrepreneurial incubator. I was a professor. Wow. I was a partner in a business, and I was a mom, and I was commuting. So I was doing a lot of things, and I was in my early 30s, and I had so much energy, but I really was working myself to the bone. And just the quick story around that was I was on my way home from the doctor's because I had all these symptoms, and she's like, yeah, you're burnt out. And on my way home, I received a phone call, and the phone call was, congratulations, you're the winner of a 40 under 40.
Oh, no.
I was like, okay, so there's irony or whatever you want to call that.
Silver lining.
Yeah, right? So I was like, what?
That's amazing.
Here I am doing all these great things, but I'm exhausted, and now I'm being rewarded for it. So
at least you were recognized for working so hard.
Sure. The recognition was good, but it also was the catalyst to, I think, a lot of the hustle culture. Yes. Right. This is where this starts to breed this type of ambition that's not sustainable. Of course. And I just wanted to dive deeper into that and to better understand how are we being influenced. So that was the pre-pandemic. It happened again in corporate.
Oh, no.
So 10 years earlier, right, rewarded again. And I talk about this in my keynotes. I talk about how we glorify the grind and how when people are nominated for awards, things like she works weekends, she's the first to arrive, last to leave, she's on all these committees, she does all these things. And that's not sustainable because once you reach, I was given this beautiful award, but I left the company 6 months later because I was like, I can't, what am I going to do next? Yeah. How do I even surpass this?
Exactly. And burnout, especially for a lot of these entrepreneurs who are wearing many hats. Just like when you were, that's typically what it is either the job is too intense or you're trying to do more than just what you're, comfortable doing.
Right.
And you're, either you have a couple of jobs, you have your parent on top of that. But a lot of these entrepreneurs, are wearing a marketing hat, they're wearing an operations hat, they're wearing, communications hat. So, off the bat, some of the things that you might notice, some symptoms that people might display that say, you're reaching burnout, and is it something that I can observe on somebody else, or is it internally that person has to recognize that they're having these symptoms of burnout?
I think it's both. If you know the person well enough, you know how they're used to functioning, and then you can see a decline in some of that functioning, right? You can see them show up very stressed, maybe very frantic, just not as calm. I think personally too, decision making, your brain becomes foggy. You can't really think clearly anymore. Simple math is you're not able to do. Getting up in the morning was becoming really difficult too, even though I loved what I was doing. I was like, I just need a day in bed. And there was almost, and I've interviewed people on my podcast called Hustle Hypocrisy, because we look at this, and I've had people say that they were hoping to get sick to get a break.
Wow.
And like when you get to that space,
That's terrible.
where you just hope, something happens so that you can just have a break, like your mind goes there. And I'm like, that is the real thing. I mean, we don't talk about that, but I think a lot of people, it's like, how in the hell am I going to get a break? Because I'm in this hustle. This is my business. I got to keep it going. I can't just take a vacation away from it. It has to keep going. I think people just get caught up in this momentum that, again, is just not sustainable.
Yeah. Again, it can lead to, quite severe sickness. I'll take a physiological approach to this from our kinesiology days. But, having the body in a constant state of stress produces a very acidic environment.
Absolutely.
Acidic environment is what disease thrives on. Cancers and things like that thrive on that too. So, they might not think that it has a direct, they might think it's more of a mental health issue, but it's actually physical and mental health because, the repercussions of always being stressed out to take a huge toll on the body. You start to develop terrible eating habits, probably not exercising, your social life probably is not as good as you want it to be too. So can you talk to some of the things that, that you've experienced perhaps on the physical side as well too, and the mental side too?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like you're saying too, those physiological things, like the cortisol level is raised too, which is not good. And it impacts us at a cellular level. Just the distraction, like the addiction to distraction, the reliance on our phones, like just the wanting to look and to see if anybody's responding is creating, havoc on our body. Yes. So definitely physiological. Mental, I've experienced it, and I've had to do some work on this. And because it just, when you get addicted to the work, or you can't pull away, or you feel like there's no way out, you start to withdraw from your friends. You start to not want to go to things. You start to show up and you're just, pretty stressed and full of anxiety. So people will start to notice that in themselves. But, there's some questions that I do get people to ask before they say yes to something new, right? This is something where I study quite a bit too, is when you're running in this frantic way of living, there's a couple of things you can ask yourself before you say yes to anything else. And the first one would be like, is this a forced yes? Is it frantic? Does it feel forced?
Yes.
Right? So take a second to think about that. Number two is, if you were to talk about this decision with your mentor, is there anything that you would hold back? Are there any details that you would hide from your mentor if you were discussing this new opportunity? Because a lot of times we leave out some details to make it sound way better than it is, so that people are like, yeah, do it. It's going to be great. But there's, other stuff that they might be like, whoa, Mel, I think that might not be good. The other thing is this a people-pleasing decision? And I think a lot of times too, we want to people please, we want to advance, we want people to like us, we want to do things that make us feel good and make others feel good. So there's a few questions that I get people to ask before, and I think that's something that I've had to lean into a lot more to really tame the urge to do it all, because you just can't. We just can't be everything to everyone.
When you work, like I'm assuming you work with individuals and you even work at the corporate level, like what would you say, like what's the timeline on in a general sense of like what your process is to give them tools and training? Because this almost does sound like a psychological thing as well, and it just takes like habit forming. But
for sure.
What would you say is the overall like process and like the timeline to achieving like getting out of the burnout stage?
Yeah, it's so different from industry to industry, and I'll tell you why. Because corporate has, for those who've worked in corporate, there is this process, right? There are these goals to achieve. You have these competencies that you're measured on. But if your manager isn't having those discussions preemptively with you about capacity, about the projects, about helping you manage what to say yes to, then that's just never going to be achieved. We can talk about it for years and it will never be achieved. But if we start to integrate it, and if we start actually awarding people and recognizing people for doing things in a healthy way that's still ambitious, then we work that into the conversation and you help people. So what I did with one company, for example, is I installed a healthy hustle award.
Oh.
So giving them the criteria that they still exceeded they still exceeded their goals. They still did it in a way that was super ambitious and fulfilling, but in a healthy way. And so I helped them instill that criteria, which then feeds into some of the feedback and conversations they have with their managers. So I love the healthy hustle piece for many reasons, and I ended up trademarking it because I'm like, I want this to live on. Yeah, it might be in the book, we'll see. But yeah, I think like that's one way that can happen. So a timeline is different. I think for entrepreneurs is different because it is more self-regulated and you have to really approach your business from that standpoint. So, I mean, for me, it's been, oh my gosh, it's been so long. It's been about a year or two where I've been working diligently in this. And I think it's just always a work in progress. And you have to measure, am I making the right decisions? Am I feeling pretty good about this year? Did I burn myself out? Where can I actually be more efficient? Where can I be more mindful?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And with your students, because you are a professor of
Yes.
entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
business, so is this something that you tie into your curriculum if you can? Like, are you able to start instilling it into even your students and people that before they head off to their co-op experience, for example, or internship about the even from the people pleasing standpoint, the asking for those performance reviews and whatnot? Like, do you instill that into your students?
Yeah, I try. I try to give them an hour of content somewhere, like a workshop that I would do with clients about capacity. And there's a whole bunch, it's interactive, right? Like my keynotes are not me up there for an hour. It's an interactive keynote where I have bands that I use for capacity elasticity, which is one exercise that I use just to get people to feel viscerally how it is to like really stretch themselves and how they walk around. So we do that. I do have a couple of other activities that they can do and participate to understand when you say yes to so many things, your cup only has so much room. And so again, giving them that visual to help them when they get into their roles. And they love it. At first I was nervous to introduce it because I thought, okay, like these guys haven't really worked. They don't know, but they are a prime audience because their plates are full too.
They're full-time students
Yes.
and they probably have a job and they have a family too, or relationships to, manage and maintain. And they still have, academic goals and, there's always pressure throughout all generations of like, you have to make it, you have to get a house, there's a certain set timeline that they might not see the other avenues that are available to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And students don't get that. I mean, they get a bit of mindfulness. I think that's kind of being approached now and built in somehow, but I think it's almost more voluntary than I think it should be part of the curriculum. And so I am more mindful of teaching them how to take care of themselves, how to take care of their mental well-being, because we can teach them how to build businesses all day long and how to be successful, but they can learn that on their own too.
Absolutely.
But I think, taking care of their mindset and their approaches and their habits is really important work that we should be taking on as well.
Absolutely. No, I 2 points that you brought up that I want to revisit. The first is that it seems that, when you had your burnout moment, and when a lot of these entrepreneurs and people that I speak to are having the burnout moments, it seems to happen during a specific age or a specific time in their life when they're really trying to establish themselves. Maybe they're fresh out of school. Maybe they're trying to, find a career and they're just trying to take on as much as they possibly can to really open as many doors as possible because they think that one's going to hit. Is with your clientele, do you find that there's a specific age where burnout is happening most?
Yeah, it's a good question because I would say that I experienced burnout 3 times.
Okay.
So in my 20s, in my 30s, and in my 40s.
Were they all different experiences?
They were all different. And they were all different, I think, because, when you get different life experiences in there, like in my 20s, it was just like I was just doing too much. I had, I had this, I think, mantra, and it was on my my email signature line where you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Michael Scott.
Michael
Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky.
No,
Yeah,
that's Michael Scott, The Office.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right. So, and that was my MO. It was like, just do everything, say yes to everything. And I think at that point it was like, I hit the wall, but I won the award because I was there, 14, 16 hours a day. I don't even remember the first house my husband and I lived in. Like, when I think back, I'm like, it's hard to actually remember. We were there for 5 years. I was hardly there. So, that was in my 20s. In my 30s, I had hit one where, I was the incubator. I had my children. I was a professor. It was a business. So again, really pressing my luck. And then you have these physiological symptoms that are like, hey, like your body's like, excuse me, you got to stop. Like you're doing too much, so we're going to give you a bloody nose. We're going to give you some hair loss. We're going to give you some headaches.
No way.
And I was just like, oh yeah, it's fine. I'll deal with it. You get the shampoo and I'll pinch my nose and I'll be like, you just try and cope. And the doctor was like, you're done. And then 40s, I was in the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack.
No
and
way.
It was an anxiety attack.
Me too. I've had that many times too. I used to, again, in my earlier 30s, late 20s, I had the exact same thing, burnout, where you're trying to take too on. You're given a new opportunity. You don't know. You don't even know how to do it. You're just put in there, and you're put in the cage of the lions, and you're trying to say, what am I doing, right?
That's right.
And then after you just take that on, you're not sleeping, and you're constantly thinking about it too. So, and one thing that you mentioned is mentors. And you referenced it, and even I'm assuming that even as accomplished as you are, that you still have mentors that you rely on too. So I wanted to bring that point because I know that Jim Diodati in season 1 mentioned mentors and how important that was to him. So I wanted to ask you, are these mentors that important, and should you be relying on them, and if so, how do you connect with the mentor?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think a lot of us want to do it all by ourselves. I can do it myself. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get there. And you can't. We just know that community is so important. I mean, look at this place that you've built and that you work in. Like it's phenomenal, and it builds community. It builds entrepreneurship. It's a beautiful thing. And so that's a great example. I think mentors you'll need different ones at different points in your life and for different things, right? If you're looking to start a business, then you're going to seek a different mentor than if you're in a business and you're looking for how to grow. If you're looking for strategy and just getting to the next step or writing a book, then you seek out somebody who has that experience. And a mentor isn't someone who's going to show you the way necessarily. They're going to ask you the right questions, right?
Exactly.
They're going to be the person that is going to hold you true to your values, hold you true to what it is that you want to do and your goals. And so how are you going to, to select those people? And really understanding that about yourself is going to be important for sure. And I think, Jim, he still has lots of mentors,
yes.
right? And as he grows in his career and he excels, I think that's an important piece for sure. So you cannot do it alone. Getting a coach. So I still hire a coach.
Oh,
a
wow.
coach helps me, figure out how to get things done.
A coach coaching a coach.
Exactly. Yeah, we all need them. I think we're never done with that. But with my coach brings community as well, with people in the same type of situation, so you don't feel alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like that it's all about like kind of just surrounding yourself with the type of people that uplift you.
Yeah.
And I know you touched on it a bit, but you are in the process of writing a book. Is that
Yes,
that's kind of
I was
like
gonna
right
say that
now
too.
your
First book?
It is my first book.
Wow.
Yeah. I co-authored one
Great.
before, so I wrote a chapter. But yeah, I am. I'm in the process of writing a book. This will be probably the 10th time that I write the book. I think along the time of writing it, I was like, oh, this isn't the right book that I'm writing. And I tried to be so scientific and so research and jam it with all this stuff. And I'm like, that's not the book I want to read or write. I want my readers to sit on the dock somewhere or sit in the office and read something where they see themselves, they recognize themselves, where they are like, okay, I've been through that. I feel that. What can I do next? And
Absolutely.
so I can show them that or inspire them to the next step.
Is the book based on, capacity building, capacity creation? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely focused on how to create capacity. And I've been told so many times, like, you're not going to call the book Capacity Creator, are you? I'm like, no, I won't. There's no action to that necessarily. But I think educating people on, we use the word bandwidth, we use the word energy, we use the word capacity. And I think just really understanding that we all have to respect the capacity we have. And like you had said too, Dan, like at one point, in our careers, we have to stretch.
Yes.
I'm constantly asked, well, we have to do more than what we're capable at one point. And I said, yeah, we are. We have to understand like when we do stretch, but how do we build the resilience to do that? And then how do we actually build in the recovery time after? And I think that's what's forgotten, right? Is like, how do you work your way up to being in this time of like frenetic, busy, it's like we're eating craft dinner for 3 weeks right now. And then when I get back, we'll have filet mignon and we'll re-energize and recover. But you have to be able to build that in, right?
Absolutely.
And I think like that's a huge part of doing that. So the book, I want it just to reach people in a way where they don't feel alone. I will be sharing some personal stories, sharing stories of my clients, sharing stories from the podcast and, and the thousands of people I've worked with.
I was going to say, you have, how many years have you been creating your own content? Because it sounds like it's been a long journey that you've been doing your own content, the podcasting, the TED Talks, the speaking engagements, the coaching pieces. So you have a lot of working content. Is it kind of the same feeling as when you were preparing for the TED Talk? Like you have to condense it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love to read, right? Like I have so many books that I like pick up that I want to read and I take little bites from and I connect it. And that's my favorite part. So I want to bring that to the book too. So authors like Brene Brown and Ryan Holiday, and there's just so much that we can take and use and connect and give tools. So the content creation, I've been doing that for 10 years. And I've spent a lot of money trademarking, but I don't know. Sometimes you're like, do I do it? Do I not? But some of these things you want to protect because they're your IP, and I bring them with me wherever I go and share them with people. And I take a lot of pride in what I do for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure it ties into the curriculum again. Like
It
all ties back to kind of, I feel like your three big things. Like you're educationally focused.
Yeah.
You're more coaching focused, and then of course, obviously, you have all of your content and your entrepreneurial spirit that you kind of like pay forward and try to like share that and instill into people's values. Yeah,
that's a great summary. Absolutely, I love that. Thank you.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I want to go back. You mentioned failure, and failure is the best way to learn. Or the first attempt in learning. If you're Jim Diodati, that's his line too. So I want to talk to, some of the failures you've had in life, if you're willing to share them, and then how you kind of overcame them so you don't fail on the same thing twice.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I self-admittedly have loved to play it safe for a long time. I've been very, very scared of failure. My first big failure was failing a first year super psych class at university with 2,500 people. And I was like, darn it, how am I going to go home and do this, right? But that was a big one. And then, I think it was, a partnership too. I mean, I don't look at like the word fail. I was on this podcast, that talks about fail too. And failure has still a negative connotation. But again, like my daughter was just valedictorian at her school and did this speech and said, failure is our best teacher. Like you have to get the lessons out of it. You can't be scared of it. But I think what happens is that as entrepreneurs too, we put so much into what we do that we don't want to fall flat on our face. And I think we make this story up that society or the people that surround us are unforgiving when they're very forgiving, because no one cares about what you're doing, really. They care about themselves, right? Exactly. So when we think about putting things out there, like just keep trying and try again. And I think I've been playing, small, and I think that is that's setting myself up for failure, to be honest. So there's this failure mentality, there's playing small, but now it's like, but I had to recover. I had a couple of bouts of burnout. And I think at that point that keeps you playing small and playing safe, and so it's now time to take those big strides and take some big chances and take some big risks and fail.
Now, of course. And what are some things, we talked about mentors, some other tools to, not have the chance of failing so often. So relying on mentors, perhaps relying on some certain technologies, any other thing that you think that entrepreneurs can do right now? Because, a lot of entrepreneurs that we work with, they're fantastic, they have a great product, but then, they don't take feedback, they don't take criticism, they're stubborn, and then they end up failing because they're not opening themselves up. And that's why I believe that mentors are so important for that sense, is that, you have somebody to bounce something off that you trust their word, right? That is like, you're going to take it. You're definitely going to take into consideration because they've helped you along your journey. So apart from mentors, some of the other tools and resources that you can use to try to avoid failing. Yeah.
And I think, I just want to draw a parallel. I know you and I are into basketball, and for all those who are listening who are into sports, I was just at my daughter's elite camp, and I'm watching, and I think like there's so much to be said about what coaches look for and mentors look for in people too, because a mentor, has to pick you too. You can't just go up to somebody and they have to be invested in you as well. And so you have to be coachable. You have to work hard. You have to pick a couple of things to really work on. You have to do the work at home. You can't just show up and with your mentor and have a discussion. Like, you have to keep working on these things. So I think like as an entrepreneur looking to excel, keeping it a bit simple, keeping it more simple than trying on so many things. Never before have we been have had so much opportunity in front of us, do this, try this. This is going to be the easiest way, the cheapest way. And it's just like, we have to quiet that and just focus on what it is that we want to accomplish. And I think what happens is the goal becomes how much money can I make and how little time, how much, how much, I don't even know if this is a word, but like how viral can I get? Virality? I don't even know if that's a word. But like how viral can this get? How quickly? And I think we are teaching that. I'm watching my children grow up, and that's what they're seeing is just so focus, go back to the goal. And keep carving the goal, keep massaging the goal, keep do that. We just did a family vision board so that we can focus as a family on what it is we want to do and how we to support each other too, right? And
that's
I think
awesome.
that's a big thing for entrepreneurs. I've been guilty, and I've done all of the things. I've had all of the software. I look at my credit card bill at the end of the month, at the end of the year, and I'm like, what did I spend my money on just to make it easier when it cost me money and I didn't use any of those things?
Exactly.
So we have to be careful not to get sucked into those.
Yeah, and that's what often they do, right? Is they get sucked into all these new opportunities and trying to pivot their idea and keep pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. It's just like, no, get it to market, and learn from failure.
Yes.
And there's a famous line that I always use, and is that the innovator kills the invention and the entrepreneur kills the business. And essentially what that is that the innovator is always so focused on getting their product perfect before they get it to market that they end up waiting too long and somebody else does it better than them, right? So it's finding that sweet spot to say, let's get it out there.
Yes.
Let's stop pivoting. Let's get it to market. Let's get my business, let's get my service going. And then as I launch it, I learn. And because entrepreneurship innovation, it's a journey. It's not, and even virality, it's it's a journey, because once you reach the ultimate goal, then you're going to want more.
Yes.
And you're going to want more. You're going to actually work. You're going to burn out quicker because it's just not enough, as opposed to saying, you know what, let's just go through the journey. It's all learning. As long as I'm living a healthy, good life, and I can support myself and my family, then that's the best goal in life, right? Is to achieve that. So no, I love everything you're saying about that.
Well, you just made a good point, because on the way here I was listening to CBC, and they were interviewing an artist that had just won a Juno. And this artist, I think it was Daniel Caesar or something, and he had got this Juno, which is the award that he wanted, and his dreams had come true. And the host, the interviewer, was saying that the desire is better than the getting.
Exactly.
And, the desire is always better. And then once you get it, you're like, okay, well, now what?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was such a good point, because I was like, yeah, like when we set these goals, for sure. And also, I mean, this whole writing of the book, like, yeah, I'm scared, so scared of this book not, working, or it not hitting home, or people not liking it. And I just have to get over that. And my husband said to me, he's like, stop writing the book.
Yeah.
Right? It just write a book.
Exactly.
You can write more.
The first one's not going to be, I mean, it's very rare that your first invention or your first book is going to be the one that's a New York Times bestseller.
Right.
So, stop putting the focus on that.
Yes.
Let the customers provide you the feedback to get you to the next step.
Exactly. And I often tell my clients, which, is popular after, but in the moment they're like, what did you just say? And I'll tell them, I'm like, you're not that important.
Yeah. It's true.
And it just like, it's okay. Like you're not that important. And as soon as you kind of let that sink in, it's like, yes, you are important, but you're not that important where it's going to stop you from doing what it is that you want to do. Yeah. So just get it done, learn from it, and move on.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's people like think they have all eyes on them,
Yeah.
or like people are really tuned into the exact progress. But you learn later that no one knows what's going on behind the scenes, but you really. So obviously you put out your best, perception forward, and you get through it. But it's lean on the family, lean on the mentors, the coaches, and that's who you can like trust to let them see behind the scenes, and just keep on, failing forward or moving forward, whatever
100%.
floats your boat. Yeah.
And listen, even to the critics, even to the negative feedback. Those are actually your best feedback too. As long as they're not just so blatant saying this sucks, as long as they give you a reason as to why they didn't enjoy that product, why they didn't enjoy that service. Because if you listen to them and you pivot according to what they say, as long as it's reasonable, then you're going to attract more people. Because I find people think in similar parallels, right? And that's why everybody uses Instagram, because they all enjoy Instagram, right? We're not that different. We're all human. So if somebody's giving you a piece of feedback that's very valuable, and you listen to it, and you alter your business, your product, your service, then you're going to reach that many more people.
100%.
And I just wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about that. When you started coaching, how did you get as successful as you are today? Because I mean, you were a new coach. I mean, your experience was probably good, but I mean, it was limited. A lot of coaches that I worked with in the past, they're in their 60s, 70s. They've had a whole life of experiences. So how did you grow your clientele? Because a lot of our businesses here need to grow their clientele. How did you market yourself? Sure. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah. We talk about failure. When I started coaching, I almost fell into this like therapy role. And I was like, oh, like I can't do this. Like I'm not registered as a therapist. I'm not a therapist, right? Yeah. So it was almost like I had to stop and kind of retool. And I think that's where, for me, the assessment was born and the frameworks came into place too. It's like I needed a structure that I wanted to use, and I wanted people to feel like they had a foundational starting point with me. So it's like, okay, we're going to talk and really understanding what I was good at and what I was focusing on. Because I think when you try to be everything to everyone or have this big wide net, you're not going to be as effective. Yes. So it's really understanding, what am I trying to do? What are the results that my clients are going to get? And really getting those testimonials will also inform you to say what it is that they're experiencing, so that you can feed that back to people to say, here's how I'm going to help you solve your problem. Because people don't know what they don't know either.
Of course.
They know they're struggling. So if you can articulate what it is that they're struggling with and what you're going to help them with, then you have them forever. And I think just really, again, staying true to what it is that I did know and what I could help them with. What I can't help them with is where I'll move them along to someone who can. And I think that's huge. And that's in any business. Yeah. So I think that's a big deal. In terms of marketing myself, I'm very bad at that. Actually, I'm not.
I follow you on Instagram.
Marketing.
I think you're really good.
Thank you. I hired a content creator, who was also here last summer.
Oh, no way.
And we did a couple of things, and it was great, but it's a lot of work and it's a huge investment. And I had to pull back because, he is so talented and so good and so patient with me, and he was really, really generous. But coming up with content every week and creating 3 reels of 30 seconds. People are like, oh, that must be like super fun and easy. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I stress for 6 days about what it is. And then I like create it the day before and then we pull it off. But it's stressful to come up with things. And then at one point, are you giving away this content?
Yes.
You know, and where am I putting my energy? Where am I putting my capacity versus, you know, saving it for working with people? So when I work, you know, one-on-one, you know, with students who are starting businesses at any, you know, whatever level they're at, or corporate clients, whatever level they're at, it's really where are they starting from? Where do they want to get to? Looking at some of those habits and really focusing in on that capacity creation and that sustainable ambition, and really helping them continue to grow. That's where my niche is.
And I'm glad you just said that word niche, because that's what we really know. There's a lot of coaches out there. And if you just say you're a business consultant or a business coach and you even market yourself, you're going to get drowned out. Everybody's marketing themselves every single day. People are spending thousands, millions of dollars on marketing themselves every day.
Yeah.
So you found your niche. And, you know, can you talk about, you know, how long it took you to find your niche? Because I'm sure you didn't start with capacity creation as your overall coaching. I'm sure that's something like, wow, I actually have a lot of experience in it. So, you know, how do you go about finding your niche?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, I think that's such a unique journey. For me, it was like okay, so here's how it kind of all started too. So one of the moments I remember, I'm sitting in a conference, you know, there's about 100 women and there's 3 women who are speaking up there. And it was a fairly new conference. And I was like, man, I could be up there doing this. Like, I want to be up there talking about stuff, right? So at lunch, I went to the organizer and I said like, hey, I slipped her a piece of paper and I said, I'd really love to do this. And she's like, perfect. Send me, you know, a note or your resume. I was like, oh, okay. So I sent her a resume and she kept it. She had kept it for 10 years. She still has it, but she hired me to do events. And so I would come up and I would talk about it because she believed in what I had to say. So I would go up and literally, you know, I think this is a bit of luck, but it's also a bit of like I was confident in doing it. She gave me 120 people in her community to do 1.5-hour workshops, to do 1.5-hour keynotes. Yeah, and I was piloting my stuff and I was getting real-time feedback and people loved it. And then it just kept growing from there and I kept honing it and I kept, you know, honing the stories and bringing more stories into it and then, you know, sharing them in different channels and in different places, and it was working. So I think those are some of those, you got to take those risks and be willing to fail, because I could have fallen flat on my face.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's some times where I probably could have done a lot better, but again, piloting and getting that feedback and growing. And then, you know, again, burnout, I do credit burnout for, it's weird to say that, but for making me create this assessment, because it made me go inward to say like, I don't want to go through this again. So how do I actually stop this from happening and create a series of questions where I can be like, okay, here's what state of capacity I'm in. What do I need to get to this maximized state, the best state that I could be in?
Absolutely. And it's funny because, again, you found that failure was your best teacher.
Yeah.
That burnout was perhaps, you know, from what you've been saying, one of your biggest failures in life. And that has essentially created your niche and created your business. So again, a great example of how failure is the best teacher. And I know I'm taking a lot of the time from Emma here.
I'm loving this. This is good.
But, you know, I wanted to talk about piloting and how important it is to pilot. And that's something that at the hub that we thrive on, and we really try to connect with them. And so many community partners provide piloting opportunities for these entrepreneurs and innovators, because you don't know, like I say, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And you might think you have a solid product or a solid service or a solid coaching opportunity, and it's not up until you put it in front of a whole bunch of people, you find out, you know, maybe I need to tweak it. Maybe I need to do a little bit better. So I just want to talk about, you know, how piloting was, you know, so beneficial to you and your business.
Yeah, I mean, it just, again, gave me the opportunity to try things. And like Emma had said too, like grab your safe people, you know, people who aren't going to say, oh yeah, this is awesome. And they don't even try it, or they're just trying to like, you know, make you feel good. Like they're going to say, like, right, yeah, don't send it to mom or grandma, or you know, send it to people who are like, there's a bit of like, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't, you know, doesn't really hit home, and then get that feedback and then do it again and do it again. So I think like that's a huge piece. And again, like you have fostered that community here where people can probably rely on each other to give each other that feedback. So yeah, launching something for the first time into, you know, this abyss of strangers is probably not the best thing. You want to just make sure you get the typos, you know, worked out, and you want to do that. But yeah, I mean, like even my assessment, we've been changing it I mean, capacity, is really made up of the three things. It's made up of purpose and energy and connection. And those three things create a nexus, which is your healthy capacity. So really understanding how that people measure that, keep talking to people about that too, is really huge. So yeah, I mean, even like just stepping up to the plate sometimes. So when you go through those questions that I mentioned earlier, when someone offers you a new opportunity, right? Does it feel frantic? Are you people pleasing? Would your mentor agree with this? Like asking yourself some of those questions. And if it's no, then it might be the right thing to do. And I was asked by Julie Black. She leads, she's just an amazing person in general and very successful, but she leads Strong and Sexy, 100 Strong and Sexy, which is 100 days of like working out and worship and all this stuff. And what one part of her programming at one point was grief. And she had lost her mother. So she had a lot of people in her community who wanted to work on grief. And she's like, Mel, you'd be perfect. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you want me to lead a workshop in grief? And she's like, yeah, you'd be perfect. And she knew some of my history with grief, and it'll probably be in the book as well. And so I said, yes, because those questions I asked myself were all like, it wasn't frantic. This wasn't a people pleasing. This was something I was like, no, I'm going to do this.
You wanted to do it.
It was amazing. We had like 90% attendance rate over the 5 sessions that we did.
Wow.
The stories that came out of it, just the beautiful healing that came out of that. And that's part of capacity, because when you start to deal with grief, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be like a physical lost person. It could be loss of your job. It could be loss of a friendship, like whatever that loss is, and you deal with it. You now create the space to be able to do other things. So I jumped into that and I was like, wow, like I have another piece of curriculum here that I can probably use.
Yeah. And
that was huge.
And I totally agree about that, controlling that. And I mean, you're almost controlling a lot of your parasympathetic nervous system too.
Yes.
Your fight or flight, every time you're faced with something that reminds you of that grief, then if you don't face it, if you don't overcome it, then that's going to control you.
Yes.
I do a lot of cold showers in order to control, my parasympathetic nervous system. Is there any tools, tips or tricks that you can tell your entrepreneurs to, focus as a broad thing, to make sure that they're having the best failure opportunities, to make sure they're doing the best that they can? There's, top 5 right now, things that you think entrepreneurs, innovators, or just people in general should be doing in order to avoid those hard mistakes.
Yeah. And this is an interesting list because I'm going to be completely like hypocritical because I don't do all these things, but I try. And I think they're really important, like getting up at the same time every morning.
Yes.
I do not do, but I really do strive to. And I try. I set my alarm, but I am a snoozer.
Yeah.
But I do like that. But the one thing I do out of that list is I eat the same breakfast every single morning. The same ingredients, the same things go in.
Yes.
It's nutritious, and I know I don't have to make any decisions. The other thing is I've pared down my wardrobe quite a bit. So I just have some key staple pieces that I don't have to, waste my brain capacity or my decision-making power in the morning choosing what it is to do. Yeah. So that would be another thing too. Breathing techniques, because, I run on adrenaline. I think this is, a lot of where that capacity comes in is like we're a lot of us are addicted to that adrenaline, and the we want to say yes and we want to try new things is like just working on my breathing.
Yes,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I'm touching the microphone. Okay. As I look at the producer.
Any breathing? I read a
Yes.
book by James and Esther called Breath, and I learned a couple of breathing techniques. Any ones that you want to share with our listeners here?
Yeah, well, it's like a yoga breath.
Yeah.
And it just like really slows down your heartbeat. So before I go up on stage, I will slow my heart rate down. I never knew I can do this. When I was in corporate, I was like imposter theory, like the imposter, syndrome was there loud and clear. And I would get the red neck and I would get the really, strong heartbeat, and I couldn't control it. And it drive me crazy. I would wear turtlenecks all the time because I knew that would happen when I would get nervous or excited. Like it would be a dead giveaway, right?
It's the middle of summer, Melanie.
I know. What's wrong with you? But yeah, being able to slow down is just doing some of those yoga like breaths. So like really deep breath and then a very, very slow release, and then just work on like just lowering that heart rate. So
all through the nose?
All through the nose, but then out through the mouth. Yeah. But like I can't remember what it's called, but just like the throat. So just relaxing your throat and then just releasing super slow. And then just closing your eyes, and then your heart rate will naturally decline.
Wow. And and obviously that decreases your stress too, right?
It does, because then you get up, because the last thing you want to do is when you're speaking in any situation is to breathe like up in your chest. You want to be able to have belly breaths. So
Okay, so we had 3. We have the
Give us
two more. Two more tips and tricks.
Two more tips and tricks. Yes. Oh, gosh, journaling is another one too.
Okay,
and really just within that journal is like focusing on what you're grateful for. Like I have gratitude tattooed on my body. It's one of my core values. It took me like 30 years though to identify my core values, which is connection, gratitude, and generosity. And really focusing on like, how did I honor that is a huge piece to do this value work and this value mining work, because then I can really reflect on the day and reflect on like, how am I leading my life? So that is another one that I work on for sure.
Gratitude, generosity. What was the last one?
Connection. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Honestly, what you said even just about the wardrobe and the gratitude thing, those are big in my books too. Honestly, the wardrobe thing is actually like super, like we could do a whole another podcast all about that and how to organize your wardrobes and getting your minimalist closet. Like there's I think it's called like the 32 item method or something of that, even including shoes and socks and everything, that you only have like a very minimal closet, and it's good. It's sustainable too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I don't wear heels on stage anymore because I can't think in heels. So I have my like silver running shoes that I wear all the time.
It's your signature.
It is. No matter what I'm wearing, the silver shoes go with it. Awesome.
Yeah. So do you have one more tip for entrepreneurs, just even on like starting a business, even for people who are aspiring to start their journey or take a leap?
Yeah.
One last wrap up piece for them.
I would do the why exercise. My kids roll their eyes every time I'm like, all right, let's do the why exercise. And some of you might be familiar with this, but it's like, why do I want to do this? And then you ask yourself why after that, and why, and why, and why, until you can't answer your own question anymore. We do this with 13-year-old girls. I do this with corporate. I do this with college students. But like when you're making a decision to do something that's really important, like in terms of maybe starting your business or taking the next step, or if you want to scale it, why? And that why has to align with your goals and your values. And if it doesn't, and if you're stuck, then you're just not ready, and you just got to dig a little deeper. But the why exercise almost never fails.
Oh, my 3-year-old daughter was very good at the why exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
I was just going to say.
So I get that.
We learn from them.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted you mentioned incubator that you created.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the importance of incubators and accelerators, co-working spaces, and business centers, and how you found that your experience with that really helped you to be the entrepreneur you are today.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship was something that I think was always brewing in the back. I mean, I don't really have any in my family. I'm really the first entrepreneur in my family. Yeah, thank you. And so my parents were like, where did you get this from? But it was a spirit, and it was just the desire to create. And so, again, having gone to school and gone, for HR and corporate, these are like non-entrepreneurial type endeavors. But, I was always an intrapreneur, right? So I was always creating things wherever I was in an already established organization. But when I got to Mohawk, I had all of this autonomy. I mean, I started an international business, and then entrepreneurship came up, and I'm like, I want to like sink my teeth into this. And so I was teaching it, and I had all these groups of students. Then we had funding from the government, and we were able to start Surge. So that's what I ended up calling it, was Surge, and SURGE.
My boss will be happy with that one.
Yeah.
Shout out to Serge Felicetti.
Yeah. There you go. So it was just like this, and even at one point the president's like, well, I don't really like the name. And I was like, really? Like, let's just let it percolate. Let's let it soak. And anyways, he ended up being one of my biggest champions. But it was such an important piece because we grew it organically. We didn't need a lot of money. We talked about this earlier this morning, but we didn't need a lot of money. We just needed people, and we needed a purpose, and we needed to just do some guerrilla marketing to get students. All you need is like pizza. And they'll come for pizza, right? They'll come for lunch. They come.
As a side note, I'm a biggest believer. If you bring food,
people
will come.
Yes.
Bring sandwiches, you bring pizzas, whatever, people will come.
They came, and we brought good speakers, and we brought, entrepreneurs from different industries. We brought them from the food industry. We brought them from like even just the aesthetics industry. We brought them from financial, and they came and spoke. And then students finally had access to somebody, and they were willing to stay and answer all of these questions. And so I think as we did that, we created a trilogy where we had accounting, we had legal, and we had insurance. So then we can have those people really interested in getting those things done. So then that we could fit them. Then we started to create custom workshops. And so the name just grew. And then we started getting support. We started working with other places around the community too, in Hamilton, right? And continuing to work there. So that was huge. And it's still there. I'm no longer at Mohawk, but it's still happening there, and I'm so proud of it. And you get champions and collaborators and people who are just as invested. And again, this is above and beyond. This was a little extra work, but it was so worth it because there's people now who have their own jobs, like they are their own bosses because of that. And that's one of the proudest moments.
How important is it to have incubator in the community for business support?
It's so important because you need a place for people to go, and you need a place where resources are already there for you, and you don't have to do the work as an entrepreneur to source that, because the incubator has already done that for you.
Yeah.
And, just being in community in one place is like here, it's unbelievable. All of the different resources that are offered and all of the people, like every time I walk into the Innovation Hub, I'm always greeted with a huge smile. There's always people who know your name. People are working, they're doing the stuff that they love.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is, it's central to having, a strong ecosystem in the community and to building relationships and building, our economy and growing that here. So it's massive.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to give people a chance to kind of find you and connect with you too, because I know you do a podcast and with your website and your coaching and everything. So if you want to just, run down on how people can connect with you, find you and listen to your content, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Everything is on my website, capacitycreator.com. That's also the Instagram handle. There's this thing, Threads now, right? So I have yet to post on Threads.
New Twitter?
Yep, it's the new Twitter. So I'm there as well, but you won't find me doing much there. But yeah, everything is on the website. The assessment is there. The TED Talk is there, a way to get a hold of me. But you can also just reach me at melanie@capacitycreator.com.
Okay.
That's amazing. In the book.
Yeah.
When are we expecting the release of the book? I'm not putting you too much pressure now, am I?
I would love to have it done by fall.
Okay.
But look, I'm putting that out there, and I'm not afraid to fail if it doesn't happen.
That's
okay.
it. I love it.
You've just manifested that. So
Exactly. And then just one more question before you go. I have to bring this up because, this podcast is the Made in the Mist. You are a Niagara resident. So, why Niagara? Why is that such a great place to grow a business?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, I left Niagara young in my career, went to Mississauga, and then ended up in Hamilton. And then I was just drawn back to Niagara because there's just so much opportunity, and it's flourishing. Like there's so many things that have popped up in the last decade that are still here, and people are just so so warm and so loyal and dedicated. I think that's the big piece, is that there's a lot of appetite to work together, and there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of people like yourself, Dan and Emma, that are working hard to bring funding, to bring partnership, to bring community together. And I'm like, you can't find that everywhere. That dedication is special. And so Niagara is just, I think we're still so under the radar.
Yes.
We really need to raise the bar. And I'm excited to be part of it. I'm excited to work with you guys on this and to be a Niagara entrepreneur.
Awesome. And then Emma, the podcast, can you tell people where to find this podcast?
Of course. So this is the Made in the Mist podcast, and we're at the Niagara Falls Innovation Hub, and you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel as well. And of course, you can follow along with us at nfinnovation_hub on Instagram and Facebook.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mel. I know I learned a lot. I know Emma learned a lot too. I think we both experienced burnout at one point or another in our life too. So, I'm definitely going to be reading your book when it comes out too. And then who knows, you might have a new client as as being my coach too, because I truly believe that, if you control that, then you can control the world.
Absolutely.
And, it's just all it takes is learning the tools, the tricks, the resources to really be in control of your life. And once you control your life, then you're unstoppable. So, and you're a prime example of that, you gaining control on everything in your life. And now look at you, you're trailblazing and you're forced to reckon with too. I'm really excited about your future, our involvement together with you in the hub too, and to all our listeners, we're going to keep the fire guests coming along. Join us next week. We have another amazing guest, and we want to say thank you so much, Mel, for the opportunity. I don't know, Emma, you want to give us our closing remarks?
No, I think that's everything. We've told listeners where to find us, and this has been amazing. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you very much.
Okay.